Board of Trustees special meeting at 5:05 p.m. By law and board policy, I must notify you that this meeting is being recorded. The governor has declared a state of emergency to exist in California as a result of the threat of COVID-19. The governor issued Executive Order N2520, which directs Californians to follow public health directives, including canceling large gatherings. The executive order also allows local legislative bodies to hold meetings via conference and video calls while still satisfying state transparency requirements. The public's health and well-being are the top priority for the Del Mar Union School District Governing Board of Trustees, and you are urged to take all appropriate health and safety precautions. To facilitate this process, this meeting of the Governing Board has been made available via the Zoom link on the meeting agenda, which is available on the district's website. Members of the public who would like to address the Governing Board regarding an item on the agenda must complete and submit the online request to provide public input form. The link can be found on the front page of the agenda and at item 3.1 to be heard regarding an item on the agenda. Once you have submitted the form, please click on raise hand to let us know that you're in the call. If you have any trouble accessing the link, please email Megan Bennett at mbennett@dmusd.org, 2 N's, 2 T's. Item 1.2 is roll call. I will now take a roll call of members who are present at this meeting. Member Fitzpatrick.
Present.
Member Rathner.
Present.
Member Wooden is not present. Member Mock.
Present.
And I'm present. 4 of us are present. Item 2.1 is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Member Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Member Rathner.
Aye.
Member Mock.
Aye.
And aye for me. The motion to approve the agenda has passed. Item 3.1 is public input concerning agenda item 4.1. However, I'm double checking, but I do not believe there is any public input. Okay, no public comment. Item 4.1 is board approval of resolution number 2021-07, a resolution of the Governing Board of Trustees of the Del Mar Union School District to approve a final guaranteed maximum price for increment 2 of the Pacific Highlands Ranch School Number 9 project. I will turn it over to Chris Dahlhunty for the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Board President Halpern, members of the board, Dr. McClurg. I'm going to pull up a presentation, but first I'd like to just take a moment. We have Jim Fisher on the call, and there's Jim. Hi, Jim. Jim
Hi.
Fisher is a project executive with Erickson Hall Construction Company. He's highly experienced and respected in the field, and we've been fortunate to work with him through the pre-construction process and are looking forward to building the school with him. So we have Jim here tonight. I'll let you introduce yourself if you'd like to say anything else, Jim, and then we'll get going with the presentation.
Superintendent, President Halper, Governing Board, I just wanted to introduce myself as Jim Fisher, project exec, and I am super excited to be on this project and working with your team.
So thank you for being here, Jim. I'm going to share a little presentation to give you some more information on the resolution we bring tonight, and then Jim and I will be here to answer any questions you may have. So just to set the stage and give a little bit of background, as the board knows, you passed in September of 2020 increment 1, which was the site work and there's no demolition. That was for Del Mar Heights. So just site work on this project. I apologize for the typo. That site work has actually begun this Monday, May 17th, 2021. Very exciting to get that project started. And the guaranteed maximum price that the board approved for that initial portion was for about $4.5 million. Also, to share a little bit of background as we look at this guaranteed maximum price, there was some information to share on the bidding. We did bid for increment 2, 10-hour days and 6 days a week for the initial work up to slab on grade, which are the slabs up to the grade of the buildings that will be built. And then there's an allowance for overtime for the remainder of the work, knowing that as we've shared with the board, with the process we went through to get our coastal development permit with the city of San Diego, we've just had that approved. However, it took almost 12 months as opposed to the 4 to 6 months that the city had led us to anticipate, which has decreased the amount of time we have to build. So to ensure that we can open this school in time and to work to make it to that August 15, 2022 deadline for the classroom buildings, we will need to do some overtime and some extra time to get it done. I'd also like to share with the board, there has been some noticeable escalation over the last year. The last time we brought a major GMP for the Del Mar Heights project, we were kind of at the middle of the COVID stage. And in the last 12 months, we've seen a number of things. We've seen some supply chain disruptions over the winter. We've seen an increased a ramp up of demand that has come as things are starting to open up. And so this has led to different types of steel costing 25 to 100% more. I just checked 2x4s today. About a year ago, you could get a 2x4 at Home Depot for $2. Today, it's $8 at Home Depot. So we're seeing lumber go up. And in fact, I just read an article that talked about when building homes, home builders are seeing the lumber costs in their home build are up $37,000 per home. So we're seeing this, and then PVC, which in our plumbing, we see that in our irrigation and other areas. So I share that because we have seen escalation that has been more than one may have expected. But I think we actually have some very good pricing for this project, that being said, and have an excellent group that we're able to bring aboard. So with that in mind, for our increment 2 construction costs, we have about $42 million. And then there are contractual contingencies that we have. There's an owner's contingency and a builder's contingency that we have in each of these projects. And we also have allowances in about $1.5 million, which include the overtime. There's an inclusion of some escalation should we have issues that need to be resolved with some of our subcontractors due to the continued escalation. That money may not be spent, but we wanted to make sure that with the timeline we have the ability to resolve an issue like that without having to stall the project. And then we have some final RFI, requests for information, that are being finalized, and we wanted to make sure that those were included now so that we can move forward with the project. There's also bonds and insurance in $1.6 million, and then overhead and profit as part of the contract at $1.5 million, which brings us to a total increment 2 guaranteed maximum price of $49.1 million. And then, as we shared with Del Mar Heights, I've broken it out to look at a total project cost, because when we budget for these projects, we budget for a construction cost and we budget for soft costs, but then those come together for a total project cost. And so that's our overall budget that we're budgeting when we look at the capital improvement plan and the overall bond program. So our increment 1 GMP at $4.4 million and our increment 2 hard construction at $42 million. We also had soft costs. That includes the work we had to do with CEQA, our architect fees, the furnishing and equipment and other things that will go into that at $9.5 million, which is less than we had budgeted. We have land acquisition at almost $11 million, and then the bond, insurance, overhead, and profit at $3.1 million. And that brings us to the project cost less contingencies and allowances at $69.8 million. And we separate those out because when we get into the contingencies and allowances, these are sort of the maximums in this end. So we may have to spend this whole lump, but our goal is to be able to not spend all of this and have that maximum project cost come in under just under $74 million. So the contingencies, as I said, are the contractually required contingencies of $2.5 million, and the allowances that we just discussed along the lines of the escalation, overtime, and RFIs at $1.5 million bring us to a maximum project cost at just under $74 million. We did budget a little over $70 million. So should all of these come in, it will be $3 to $4 million, under $4 million over the budget. I will share with the board, we have finished our CDE review. And so we have approval on the project. And so we'll be submitting to get in line for state funding, which will not come right away, but will get us in line with eligibility of about $6 to $6.5 million, which will help to offset that in the long term of the bond program. So we have done that work up front to be able to be prepared to apply for that funding as it becomes available as well. And so with that, for this resolution, that was context for the overall project budget. This resolution is looking at the guaranteed maximum price, the increment 2 vertical construction at $49.1 million with an anticipated start of mid-June. We bring this to you today to get approval so that we can notice Erickson Hall and be able to begin the process to order and prepare for that so that we can start that vertical work in mid-June. And so with that, we would request approval, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Could you just go back to that, the slide
Of course.
two back, just so we can see? Can you show us in the context of the total project cost, which is the portion that you're asking? That, yeah, where's the 49?
So the 49 is a combination of this cost here and these costs here and the bonds and insurance. The better slide to show you that is the slide before. So this is the context for the increment 2. It is the hard construction costs. This is sort of the guaranteed cost of construction. We have contingencies and allowances, which are those costs that we are budgeting for and will be up to that cost. And then we have bonds, insurance, and overhead and profit, which are concrete costs as well.
Chris, in light of the changes in the construction world, are we going to value engineer this project again and maybe find ways around some of the materials that have increased in price and things of that nature? So
we, to do that would mean we would not open that school in time. So as designed, we've bid it out. To be honest, it is over budget, but with the escalation that we're seeing, I think that we've gotten a fair price. And if we take months to value engineer, we may end up reducing, but if escalation offsets that, we could have an issue where we reduce some of the quality and end up with a price that's close too. So we could go back and we could look at that, but that would be a time-consuming thing that would certainly bring us to another school year. It would not be able to open in August of 2022. We're on a tight schedule as is.
I appreciate that. And Jim, just in your expertise, do you see that value engineering could potentially reap a large benefit, or do you see it as possibly stepping over dollars to save pennies?
I don't see any huge benefits for value engineering at this time, especially structural systems, because then we'd have to go all the way back through DSA.
And can I add to Doug, we did go through a value engineering process. And so we did look at areas where we could save money and worked with Jim and the Erickson Hall team, as well as OBR and district staff. So there was a process to look at where can we make nips and tucks and make sure that we're getting the best value for our investment.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, the last few times we talked about this to the public, how much were we talking about the project costing in total?
So the total project cost that we have budgeted for is $70,046,000. Okay,
and that was that pretty a consistent number from like, I guess, FMP time through now? Is that pretty much what we've been telling the public?
Yeah, it's been a pretty consistent number throughout. And if we look back at our COC agendas where we shared, we've had a small adjustment, but we haven't, it has not been a large adjustment in the overall project cost. So we've been around that number. And then we've made adjustments as things like the price for the land have come to a true number and things like that. So the number has adjusted with that. The land costs slightly more than we'd originally budgeted. We thought 10 million when we first budgeted. It was a little closer to 11. So it's some of those things that we tweaked. But overall, it has not seen any major adjustments. No.
Okay. And the number now is a little bit higher. You mentioned we're maybe a couple million, or how many? What's the total number again? I forget.
So the total number would be almost 74 million, and we were a little over 70 million on our budget. So we're over $3 million over if we come in at the top end of that. And again, we may use all of that, and we will work to see areas where we don't need to use all of the allowance or all of the contingency and bring some of that money back to the district as well.
And can you, what can you attribute that main amount to? Is it just the escalation cost, the lumber cost, like those things, or is there additional things that I'm missing?
I would attribute it to the escalation costs, and as well as needing to work at a quicker speed because of the time it took to get through the city with the coastal development permit. So as you said, it was bid at allowing for 6 days a week and longer days at the beginning, and then with an allowance for overtime. And so there's no way that we will get it done for the August start if we don't do that. And so there is a cost associated with that, which would be over $500,000 in the allowance, and then some money in the bid for that initial part. So there's that, and then there's the escalation. And then Jim, if you have anything that you would add.
Yeah, and I think the biggest escalation out of that was the lumber and the structural steel.
Okay, thank you.
It sounds like the state may give us back some money in the long run to compensate us for any over budgetary result, right?
Yeah, and it's so our eligibility is related to the land purchase, and then we have a little bit of eligibility based on some of our enrollment. And so we finished the CDE approval, which was the pre-requirement, and then we're submitting that with a consultant that does some work with us in ensuring that we're getting all the paperwork in correctly to be able to get that application for state money. So again, that should be around $6 million. Again, it would be later in the bond program, but that's probably when we'd need it anyway. So it will work out to likely come in when we need it to offset.
Just a clarification, Chris, you and Jim, you're going through the numbers for that additional $4 million and talking about how if the school has to open in August, that it will cost a certain amount for the escalation. I can't remember if it was 500 or $1 million or so was related to opening on time. I know that when we talked about Delmar Heights or other projects, we thought about potentially a delayed start for part, like opening the classrooms, but maybe not opening the multi-purpose room. Have you looked at phasing alternatives like that would make it not necessary to be so accelerated?
Well, that is with phasing. So that would be, this is us looking at having all of our classroom, admin, MUR, and the design of this school is actually such that it's one building. So you couldn't really leave off the multi-use room because it's connected, and you actually walk through that Innovation Center multi-use room to get to the classroom. So, it's not, it doesn't cater to that. However, the kitchen, the the after-school program room buildings, we have pieces like the slab that's going in. It makes sense for it to go at that time, but the building of it can be delayed and not finished in time. The field may not be done quite in time. So we're looking at making sure we have the classrooms and the lunch and the blacktop and the parking, and then we have sort of phased it so that we can, work towards that August 15th, 2022 date.
In my experience, the only things that are guaranteed are death and taxes. And you're saying this is a guaranteed maximum price. How guaranteed is guaranteed?
Jim, do you want
to? I would say that the only thing that would not unguarantee this would be something that we hit unforeseen underground. But for the most part, every project I've ever done as a guaranteed maximum price, I've returned money in the end. Maybe not much, but a little bit.
Can you just repeat that one more time, Jim? Just kidding.
So basically, every guaranteed maximum project I've ever done, we've returned money in the end. Sometimes not much, but something. And really, truly, for a guaranteed maximum price, the way it's written in the contract, the only wiggle room I would have is if you change the scope, or if we found something underground that was catastrophic.
A huge contingency issue.
Yes.
Okay.
Catherine, any questions? Or Scott? I see Scott joined.
Oh. No, I have no questions. I'm just having issues with with my bandwidth.
I guess I just had a question. It's slightly related, but regarding the consultant who's helping us submit the paperwork for, I think it was to the CDE, are we using a consultant throughout, like the same consultant for all the projects that we're working on? And can you remind me when we approved that consultant? And is the money to pay the consultant coming from the bond funds?
So I couldn't tell you when we approved that person, Catherine. CLC is the group that helps us to navigate it. There is a process with the California Department of Education, and there's a process with the Office of Public School Construction. And so the paperwork is very precise. And then there's an auditing component and a requirement to hold on to items for 20 years after you've submitted. And so we work with them to ensure that we get that in appropriately and don't make a mistake because we don't do it every day that would cost us millions of dollars. So they are the same group that works with all of our, so they look at our eligibility across the districts. For example, you have eligibility at a certain lifespan of a school. So at 25 years, you start to have a certain level of eligibility. And for our district, it's not a huge amount of money, but at those points, we will apply for whatever we can get so that we can put it back into the program and ensure that it goes back to our students in our schools.
Is this, so you said CLC is the name of the?
That's correct.
So that's something that we've contracted independently with them. It's not something that is provided to us by the county or anything like that to help us with this paperwork.
Yes, it's not through the county.
Okay. Yeah, I just would like to see when we approved it, because I know that we have I think a policy that we approve all consultant contracts. So I'm just curious about that one. But I think it's definitely worthwhile. We don't want to mess up on the application and have to start over or anything like that.
Yeah, we can look into that for you. I know that we brought it for approval. I just can't speak to the exact date.
Okay, thanks, Chris. You'll get back to us on that date. Okay, so I think if there's nothing else, we need a motion to approve Resolution 2021-07.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Member Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Member Raffner.
Aye.
Member Wooden.
Aye.
Member Mock.
Aye.
An aye for me. The motion has been approved. Item 5.1 is adjournment of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Third.
Roll call vote. Member Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Member Raffner.
Aye.
Member Wooden.
Aye.
Member Mock.
Aye.
An aye for me. The meeting is adjourned at 5:28 p.m. and that may be a record. See y'all next week. Bye.